Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey everyone, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. Today we are presented by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Learn how you can help save a child's life by sponsoring them through Compassion by going to the website, compassion.com/sportsspectrum, and sponsoring a child today. We are also presented by IJM. We love the International Justice Mission and what they stand for, helping to protect more than 150 million people from violence worldwide. Join the fight to end slavery by visiting their website, ijm.org/TF, to become a Freedom Partner today. Really excited today to welcome Michael Turk to Sports Spectrum. Michael is a former Arizona State punter. That's who we played with last season in 2019, punting for Arizona State. First-Team All-Pac selection. Wildly considered one of the best punters in the country. Averaged 46 yards per punt, had 23 punts of 50-plus yards. Before that, he transferred from an FCS school, Lafayette College, and did pretty well there, came over to Arizona State, and then this season, after the 2019 season, I should say, decided to forego his last 2 years of college eligibility to pursue his NFL dream. Now, interestingly enough, back in February at the NFL Scouting Combine, he recorded 25 reps of 220 points in the bench press testing. Nothing to do with punting. We're talking about a guy who has a lot of strength. It was the most reps by a punter at the Combine since 2003, and he made some noise, let's say, through the social media circles and on different areas, on football and sports media channels. Michael Turk became a little bit of a sensation for a few days there at the Combine. And he joins us here today to talk about preparing for the NFL draft, certainly the workouts and what he's been doing with the different things that change with the uncertainty of life, as we all are, in the way that we're living with the coronavirus outbreak, and hopefully starting to get back to a little bit of normalcy, which is very difficult, but this thing has affected so many people on so many levels. So we start this podcast talking to Mike about that, and then we get into his journey, and certainly that journey includes his walk with Jesus. Take a listen to Michael Turk, the former Arizona State punter, preparing for the NFL, joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Michael Turk, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you, Mike. And I love how we connected on social media. Initially, I think it was back in the winter when we were talking about telling these stories of sports and faith on our show. But let's start with right now. We're taping this in the end of March, and we're obviously in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak, and it's hit everyone, if you will, on every level, on some bigger, some smaller. But I'll start with, first of all, how this is impacting you. How are you? And just from a personal perspective, how has this impacted you? I know you're in Houston, Texas, so tell us about that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how much impacted everyone on a national level and even global. But thankfully, as far as my training goes right now, the social distancing factor doesn't matter too much when I'm out in the field punting. So as far as my training regime, the punting goes as normal. Obviously, the gyms are closed, though, so I have to figure out how to work out at home, which actually my legs and whatnot have been more sore than usual because I kind of had to switch up my workout routine, and my body's not used to that. So it's actually been good from a training standpoint. Thankfully, also right before everything got super crazy, I got 2 private workouts in, and that was important because thankfully those went well, and that was right before our pro day got canceled as well. So right now I'm just training, and hopefully this ends soon.
Have you been able to stay? I mean, listen, we're taping this through Zoom, right? Just to be completely transparent with people listening. So have you been able to stay in touch with, whether it's scouts, whether it's different people at Arizona State or whoever it might be that can help you through this process? Have you been able to kind of maintain good dialogue there?
Yes, I have. I think they are also, have a lot on their priorities and whatnot as well. So I'm still in touch with all the scouts and everyone who was interested in my agent. So things are going well right now. He just told me to focus on training, and what's going to happen next is whatever is going to happen.
What does that training look like for you right now? You said it was a little different training from home. What does that look like exactly?
Yeah, well, I train 6 days a week. 5 of those days I go out and punt, and that's usually for around 2 to 3 hours with my uncle. And then hopefully sometimes my brother can join as well, my brother Ben. And that just consists of hitting over 100 balls and just working on different things, directional punts, everything, my get off and all that. And then at home, thankfully my uncle has a home gym, so I'm able to still get good workouts in. But when I said a little bit different, I mean, for example, at the gym I might do some hang cleans or super heavy squats or something. But here, he only has a certain allotted weights, so I've been doing higher reps, and actually my legs, I've been more sore than usual because I'm giving my body different workouts. So it's actually been good. I even been swimming in the backyard. My uncle has a pool, and getting cardio and stuff like that. So the training's been well, thankfully.
Has this social distancing thing been hard for you? I mean, I think it's hard for everyone. It's important to do it. But even just kind of staying cooped up in your house, obviously you're able to work out and go to your uncle's, house or whatever, or the home gym and continue that part of it. But otherwise we're told to stay home. I mean, I think it's the same in Houston as it is in Connecticut here, and pretty much all throughout the country is we're told to stay home for, a extended period of time here. Is that easy or is that hard for you?
Yeah. Thankfully, I think naturally I'm a bit more of an introvert. If I ever do like to go out and do things, it's usually to have some sort of influence in regards to my faith and just, do whether it's ministry or something. But thankfully, for the past 5 years or 4 years, however long I've been punting and training, I feel like my days usually consist of most of the time out in the field by myself punting, and then at the gym working out by myself. So that it honestly hasn't felt like too much of a change. And then thankfully, with technology like this or whatever, I can still talk to some of my good friends and FaceTime them and whatnot. So, and then also my family is just definitely a huge blessing. I'm here right now with my uncle and my aunt, and then my 3 cousins who they're all super nice, and we like to hang out and do stuff together still too at home. So it's not too bad.
That's good. Michael Turk's our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Let me ask you about the combine. Let's go there and talk about what that experience was like for you. You made some news, obviously, not because of your punting, but because of your jacked uppedness, if you will, if that's even a word, in terms of your bench press. But just what was that overall experience like at the combine? And then we'll talk about the bench press experience.
Yeah, it was great. I was just thankful to be there through all that I've gone through with my punting career. And I knew that God just prepared that in advance. So I was just happy to be there. And there was definitely a lot of interviews and a lot of random testing, whether that's psychologically or just writing stuff that I didn't foresee that much of that going on. And it was kind of a lot of logistical stuff with your medical history and all that. So, but I just all took it in stride, and I was just happy to be there. So it was never a moment of, oh man, this is getting frustrating, because I knew it was such a blessing to be there and how many people would love to be there. So, it was cool. I think there were, I don't know how many punters. I think there might've been 5 punters there. So we kind of all, whenever we met up as a group, it was kind of just, it was cool to see those guys too, and just kind of, take the experience in. And yeah, I don't know if you want me to talk about the bench press right now, but.
Well, listen, I mean, that was going to be my next question, because that, weirdly enough, even Sports Spectrum wrote about it. It puts you into a different category of making news. Sometimes you want to make news. There's good reasons to make news. There's bad reasons to make news. And some people will say any news is good news. And you make news because you recorded 25 reps of 225 pounds in the bench press. It was the most by a punter since 2003. And suddenly that's being talked about everywhere on social media and all the different channels and sports channels. What went on there? Do punters honestly even do bench press normally?
Kind of a funny story. And I think it just shows God, and I know God kind of worked that out. And it's kind of ironic because leading up to the draft, I was punting every day with my uncle, and he mentioned that, and he was actually telling me not even to do the bench press, and I kind of agreed. I was like, yeah, I might not do it because it was the day before we punted, and I didn't want to, maybe be sore just pointlessly, because I know that special teams coaches probably couldn't care less about that. And
right.
So I actually wasn't even going to do it, and I wasn't even training for it. So leading up to the draft, I did not train the bench press. I did the test one time, and it was like 3 weeks before the draft here at the local gym. And it was really not on my mind. But then when I was actually in Indianapolis, my uncle showed up the same day that we did the bench press testing. And then he saw me behind the stage where all the linemen were doing everything. And then all of a sudden, he completely changed his demeanor. He tells me, if you're here, you might as well do it, give it all you got. And then so all of a sudden, I completely switched thoughts and I got really fired up. And then I wrote I wrote a Bible verse on the inside of my arms, Mark 1:15,
okay,
talking about repentance and believing the gospel. And I was hoping, well, if anyone does see this, hopefully they could just see these Bible verses, and I know I'll do this for God. So then I got fired up and just gave it my all, and that was it. And then I didn't really think much of it either. Once I walked off, and I just we went to the next event as a group, and then all of a sudden everyone was asking me about it. So it was kind of funny how God worked. I conceded that all the bench press that I did in my years prior, because I used to play safety, so I used to work out upper body a lot more. All that just was for that one moment, and it's funny how God used it.
Wait, so you're not going to going back and starting to just keep the press going? You're not consistently
I might
getting
try,
jacked up every day?
I try to get 26 one of these times, but as of right now, no. I just try to do more just healthy upper body stuff, so push-ups and just staying healthy overall in my whole body.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that story. I think it's great, and I think that even using, like you said, the Bible verse. I think you said Mark 1:15.
Yeah, Mark 1:15.
Jesus talking about the time is fulfilled and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel, which is just the simple aspect of who Jesus is and what he's asking us all to do in terms of trusting and putting our faith in him. Let me ask you about that faith. How important, I mean, obviously we know it's important, but how has that faith kind of taken shape for you, evolved over the years, and helped you along in your journey?
Yeah, good question. I would say help is definitely an understatement. And I know without the Lord, I have nothing. I really have nothing in and of myself to boast about, or nothing to cling on to. So God is definitely not only just my help, but like the word says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. So Christ is my life, and thankfully he's been guiding me in terms of just the punting. I've also started to realize more lately that it's really never been about the punting, because I know a few years ago, 4 or 3 years ago, I was still for sure focused on Christ as my life and living for him, but I almost viewed punting as like a very close, or not very close, but a close second in terms of just God wanting me to give it all as a punter. And I'm still doing that. I'm still pursuing to be the best punter I could possibly be, and Lord willing, the best punter ever. But that's not, God's helping me realize that's not what it's about. It's about, glorifying him, preaching the gospel, and then just whatever avenue we are, whether you're a punter or a teacher or whatever you're doing it for his glory and allowing him to use that for his purposes.
Mike, take us back a little bit. You grew up in a football family. Your dad punted for Notre Dame.
My brother did.
Your brother punted for Notre Dame. Your uncle was a 3-time NFL Pro Bowl punter, Matt Turk. You referenced your uncle earlier. And even your Uncle Dan, who I know you didn't know very well, was a long snapper in the NFL for many years before his passing. So take us back to what that was like growing up. When I first heard you and referenced you, when I saw Michael Turk, I'm like, I wonder if he's related to the Turks that played in the NFL back when I was probably your age now. And clearly you were. So take us back to what that was like growing up and what life was like for you.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that was with my immediate family, my mom and dad, very loving. And then I grew up with just my brother, Joe, because I have 3 siblings, Ben, Joe, and Jessica. And then Ben and Jessica actually earlier on in my life moved and went on to live with my uncle Matthew. So I didn't really grow up with them, but it was just me, Joe, my mom, my dad. And then around my high school years, so my very first year in high school, my freshman year, we had some just some family trouble and financial trouble at home. So I actually moved to live with my uncle out here in Houston. And that's when I lived with Matt during my high school years. So basically my whole high school career, I lived with Matt in Houston. And as far as the football goes, like in our family, it wasn't. I played a lot of basketball growing up, and I played pretty much every sport, but I wasn't, in terms of just envisioning myself as an NFL player. That was obviously a goal, but it wasn't as much as you may think in my family. I actually didn't even start punting until after high school. So I played safety during high school, and nothing really panned out, and I had some bad injuries. So, yeah.
We'll get back to our conversation with Michael Turk in just a moment, but want to share a little bit from our partners, IJM, International Justice Mission. And while we sit here and learn about the reality of slavery, there are thousands of traffickers using all of their power to keep people enslaved forever, all because slavery is profitable. They simply value money more than they value human life. These slave owners are relentless, calculated, and tenacious, unafraid to use their power, their money, and their influence to oppress others. So we must act. Each one of us here needs to partner with IJM by becoming Freedom Partners today. These Freedom Partners give $24 or more each month to IJM and are given regular opportunities to pray and advocate with IJM for the end of slavery. The single largest barrier to IJM freeing millions of slaves is a lack of financial resources. Without the monthly giving of Freedom Partners, slavery will not end. Go to the website, ijm.org/TF, ijm.org/TF, and because of Freedom Partners like you, IJM is setting slaves free and putting their owners behind bars. Check out ijm.org/TF. Become a Freedom Partner today. We're also presented by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Every child being discipled in the Word of God, over 150,000 children choosing to follow Jesus. Following Jesus. I love saying that. 150,000 children choosing to follow Jesus in the last year alone because of Compassion International. 2 million children around the world are feeling the impact and finding hope because of sponsorships like yours and mine with Compassion. You will never regret $38 a month and the most trusted child development ministry in the world with Compassion. Go to their website, compassion.com/sportspectrum, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and pray about sponsoring a child today. Now back to our conversation with Michael Turk here on Sports Spectrum. Was the idea of you someday training to become an NFL player, which is what you're doing now, was that real life when you were in high school, when you're a safety, or was that something that you said, okay, I grew up in this football family, but I'm not sure if this will ever really, take shape, but is that something that was a dream for you, following in the footsteps of, your uncle and others?
Yeah. And just going back, this ties into going back to my faith. I think when I was younger and just entering high school, even before I could focus on football, I had a lot of other issues going on that, was a result of my sin and a result of just not having my head on straight. So I think really God used a lot of events to humble me. And that was the first thing I needed to get straight was, believing in the Lord. And then once that did happen, I got baptized my sophomore year and really, was born again. Once that happened and I started playing safety, that was when I knew I did, as far as my career pursuits, I did want to play in the NFL. And so, like I said, I played safety and I trained as hard as I could for that. And that was the goal/dream to play in the NFL.
When did the pivot take place from safety to punter? Because I know you end up at Lafayette College, which is an FCS school. Take us through that journey a little bit of transitioning, because that's a different position. When you go from a safety to a punter, that is vastly different as far as training and some of the things that you alluded to earlier.
Yeah, quite the difference. So I had some injuries in high school with ACL, and I know coaches don't like to hear that, but thankfully my knees are fine now and 100% healthy. But those injuries kind of sidetracked my safety career, and nothing. I had no like real good opportunities coming out of high school as a safety. So then once that happened, I decided I was going to take either a gap year or go to a junior college and learn how to punt. And I really do not, I love the verse where it talks about man plans his way in his heart, but God determines his steps. I did not know how the whole thing was going to work out, because it didn't really make any sense. I didn't punt in high school, and then all of a sudden I was going to try to maybe punt at a junior college or whatever. So I prayed about it, and then thankfully my brother Ben, he's the one who punted at Notre Dame. He's been a huge blessing and help. He offered for me to live with him for 1 year in Dallas, Texas, and that's really when I started punting every day, like 6 days a week, and training to try to be a punter. So after that, towards the end of that gap year in Dallas, I compiled some YouTube film of me punting and sent that out to a lot of schools. And then thankfully Lafayette gave me a full scholarship just off of my YouTube film of punting. And it was obviously super difficult learning, because a lot of kickers and punters have a soccer background, but I never played soccer. So it was very difficult to learn. And thankfully, just with the support of my uncle Ben, and then I've watched every YouTube video there is on NFL punters and everything, and just really gave it my all. Thankfully, after all that, Lafayette gave me a scholarship, and that's when my punting career started collegiately.
Isn't that a great story? Like literally using YouTube to potentially catapult what is a dream of yours and a career into where you are now. Tell me about Lafayette. I don't know a lot about Lafayette College. Where is it? Is it in Louisiana? I'm guessing Lafayette, but I don't even know where it is. Tell us about Lafayette.
Yeah, that's a common thought because of Louisiana Lafayette. That's actually Division I. That's an FBS school though. Now Lafayette College is in Easton, Pennsylvania. Okay. They're in the Patriot League, and it's a pretty good academic school. Very small though. So I didn't really know much about them, but when I heard that they were going to give me a full scholarship, and it's one of the most expensive schools to go to. It's like $70,000 a year. I was obviously very ecstatic about that and was thanking the Lord. And that was a wonderful time there. I think that was crucial for me just to get in-game punts and kind of see, kind of just grow myself as a punter in a huge way. And so I was very thankful for that time there. And then obviously, as you know, I only played 1 year there, and then I decided I wanted to transfer. So.
Yeah. And then the opportunity comes to go to Arizona State. My old colleague, Herm Edwards, is there, the head coach of Arizona State, and walk me through that process of transferring. And maybe if you have a good Herm Edwards story, we all have good ones that you can share. But let's go to just getting to Arizona State first. And why Arizona State? Why go to be a Sun Devil?
All right. Well, thankfully, after the year at Lafayette, I actually decided super late that I wanted to transfer. And again, it just, it's all about God's providence in my life. And I just see that so easily. But once I decided I wanted to transfer, I was looking at multiple schools. But thankfully at ASU, really everything just lined up perfectly. I mean, you talk about Herm Edwards. Was an awesome coach. And he actually, my uncle was actually with him 1 year with the New York Jets. So that was a good connection. My uncle talked to him on my behalf when I was in the transfer portal. And, with Coach Slocum as well, he's a former NFL special teams coach. And so I knew that I couldn't get much of a better help there. And then just the location of Arizona State and being in Arizona. And then once they offered me a scholarship, I knew that's, what else could I ask for at that point? So it was a pretty easy choice once they offered me, and I was thankful that it worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, they were featured, I think, on HBO, and I watched a little bit of the behind the scenes. It was sort of similar to Hard Knocks. The HBO had a documentary, and we were featuring Arizona State, and so much was talked about that when you walk into that room, that locker room, you see NFL type coaches. You see a ton of NFL coaches. You mentioned a couple there, and I know Kevin Mawai was there, and others, and that had to be, crucial, I think, and not just for you, so many at Arizona State, but preparing you for an NFL career. What was that like to be around guys who had just had that experience? Because obviously you grew up in that football family, but being around these guys that you knew what it took to play, in the highest level.
Yeah, it was awesome. And to be honest, when I first arrived, I had to kind of pinch myself, so to speak, because 2 years ago I was punting in, sometimes in dog parks and dog fields. I never punted in high school, so all of a sudden,
right.
Lafayette was a wonderful experience, and I was surprised to be there. But then all of a sudden, as I walked in the first time, the ASU stadium and then the ASU locker room, I was like, where am I right now? And how did this all happen? I'm really on scholarship here as a punter. And so, and then that made it, further surreal when I saw Herm and just being in the team meetings and then meeting Coach Slocum and everything. So, they were all a huge help. I think it's rare in college to have that much support and that much, NFL experience. So I'm very blessed to have all them. Herm was a great coach. He didn't say much to the specialists, though, to be honest. I think throughout my whole time there, I had probably only a handful of conversations with Herm, but definitely respected and treated the specialists well. And I think he just didn't want to get in our heads, or just, he trusted us to get our work in. And but yeah, I've heard many great team speeches that got us all fired up before games.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine just being in that room, and I can't imagine because I was, and listening to Herm and do his thing. Let me ask you about your faith in college and just the uncertainty that is part of doing this journey that you went on. Not ever having punted, going to YouTube to show your punts. You get the scholarship at Lafayette. You transfer to Arizona State. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think of the verse, in all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. Everything you've described does not sound like a straight path. But if it's grounded and rooted in Christ, then it's as straight as it can be. Walk me through kind of staying connected to Jesus and what you learned and the growth that maybe took place in your faith journey during all this time.
Yeah. Well, even going back to my gap year, I know for sure that God was preparing me before college, because once I came to faith in high school, or really God chose me, once he saved me in high school, I knew for sure that the greater calling behind everything was to, preach the word, do the work of an evangelist, and be faithful to, ministry in that aspect. So the gap year was also crucial, not just for punting, but I had so much time in my hands. Besides, I also worked at a smoothie shop at the gym. But besides that, I was able to read through the Bible, like all the way through, and a lot of books multiple times. So that kind of prepared me before going to college, because if you don't know your word, it's going to be, obviously you're going to be more prone to fall into temptation and just not make the wise choices. So thankfully, having the word ingrained in me before even starting Lafayette was very crucial. I know God did that for a purpose. So when I was at college, I think God was also very faithful in providing opportunities to, glorify him and make disciples or lead Bible study. And there's really countless stories I could tell you, but looking back my time at Lafayette and at ASU, I've seen so much, just the power of God and salvation in the gospel, and so much, fruit bore from that. So that's very encouraging to see. And then as far as my anxiety with it, you mentioned that verse. And I also just think of really just the entire Bible. If you look at anybody in the word, you see that God, doesn't waste any of their experiences, and he always grows us from that. And he always has a greater purpose behind it, whether it's, Joseph in Genesis. I love that story, how he really goes through the ringer, getting in prison and all that, and his brothers betraying him. But we see that God had a much bigger plan behind all of it. Or even with Paul, he used to persecute the church, and and then God used him to be one of the greatest, ministers of all time. So just having that faith that God's working all things out for not only for our good, but for his glory has helped me a lot in terms of my anxiety level and a lot of other things.
You said you worked at a smoothie shop. So what's your go-to smoothie? If I'm coming to get a smoothie from Michael Turk, what are you making me?
Man, I like the one that I used to make called a blue banana. It was blueberries, peanut butter, banana, almond milk, and 2 scoops of protein and a little bit of agave nectar. It was really good.
A little blueberry and peanut butter mix.
Yes, you gotta. Yeah, it's a little dangerous because if you would have substituted the strawberries with blueberries, I tried that. It was not very good, but blueberry, peanut butter, banana go well together.
All right. I might have to try that. That's good. That's a good little advice there from Michael Turk. All right. As we pivot and wind down here, I got to ask you about the decision to forego your last 2 years of college eligibility to pursue these NFL dreams. We talked about the combine, but making that decision, that, there's probably a lot of people. I've made decisions where everybody's like, are you sure? Are you really sure? And I just knew God was leading me to where he led me, especially leaving ESPN to come to Sports Spectrum. Tell me about how the Lord led you to help make this decision.
Yeah. So I finished my last game at Arizona State for our bowl game, which was in El Paso, the Sun Bowl against Florida State. And I was on my way home from that, and I really had no thought that I was going to leave early. I thought for sure I was coming back next year. I talked about it. I thought about it with my family, like, earlier on about maybe not having to do my senior year. And, I was still focused on every single punt, every single game, but just talking about that a little bit. But as far as coming back again for next year, I thought for sure I was going to. And then all of a sudden, I get home and my uncle said something kind of fleeting about, almost jokingly about, are you going back next year? I forget what we're even talking about. He almost said it kind of fleeting. And then, I was in my room and I was just thinking to myself, is that actually a possibility? And would, obviously I know whatever decision I make, I love I believe it's Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. So I think that verse is saying that God literally, implants the correct desires, or, he's going to guide your path if you're truly, if you're seeking his kingdom and his righteousness first. You can't make the wrong choice. Obviously, if you're making a sinful choice, that's wrong. But as far as decisions go, we could be sure that God is sovereign behind it. So I just began to pray about it a lot. And then once I got that feeling in my heart and talking to my uncle about the variables and options of leaving early, there just came a point in time where, I knew for sure that's what I was going to do. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Just really God all of a sudden making me think that. And then, I'm thankful he did, obviously, because, the combine, going to the combine was a great experience. And then also just a couple of private workouts and I know whatever happens next, even if I don't make it to the NFL, I'm not regretful because I know God, and I know, God gave me that desire to do that. So I'm just excited to see whatever he has in plan.
Yeah, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. And
that's
I'm going to
right.
say it again. That's Proverbs 3:6 for those listening. And if you're acknowledging him and you're walking in his ways, Mike, he'll make that path straight for you. Let me ask you this as we close. Last question. And we ask this question to all of our guests. What are you learning from God right now? So he teaches us something new every day. It may be something you've learned over the past couple months with all that we've been going through, with you getting ready for the for the draft and going through the combine. Or it may just be something today that he's teaching you. But what are you learning from God right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say more so than anything in this season of not actively being around people, that God still wants me to, it says make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Yeah. So I'm learning that diligently, because I've read the scriptures, obviously I've read through the Bible, thankfully, but diligently being immersed in the word. And Paul says, present yourself as one approved, not needing to be ashamed, but diligently handling it and dividing it. So really just the importance of immersing myself in the Word right now and preparing myself for the good work, so to speak, up ahead that He's already prepared. Because I think sometimes in college especially, I'd be, get a little anxious wanting to do God's will or God's work and just going out and doing things, whether that's sharing the gospel or whatever. But really, I think I heard this from another pastor that I like to watch sometimes, John MacArthur. He says, if you handle the depth of your ministry, God will handle the breadth of it. So just really immersing myself in the Word and taking notes on each chapter like I haven't really done before has been something God's been teaching me. And then also, even without the face-to-face contact, applications like this, I can still do ministry, still do Bible studies, and still preach the Word. So I'd say that's mostly what God's teaching me right now.
He is Michael Turk, getting ready for the NFL draft, and we'll see if he gets picked. If not, I think there's still a good future ahead of him in the NFL. Certainly with what he did at the scouting combine, maybe he goes back to safety someday. You never know, Mike. God can do weird things with you, brother. But I appreciate you being here on the show. All the best to you. We wish you nothing but the best, and let's stay in touch, and hopefully we'll get you back on the show sometime. Thanks again.
All right, will do. Thanks, Jason. God bless.
Great stuff there from Michael Turk. He joined us here on Sports Spectrum. You can search Michael Turk on Twitter. Give him a follow there. Let him know that you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum. We appreciate him for joining us. We also appreciate our partners, both IJM, International Justice Mission, and Compassion International. We love both of them and are so grateful for their funding and their sponsorship of this show here on Sports Spectrum. Today, go to ijm.org/TF to become a Freedom Partner with IJM, and check out compassion.com/sports spectrum to learn how you can sponsor a child in Jesus' name. We appreciate you. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you check out our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Like us there, comment, share this show among anything else you want to share that has to do with Sports Spectrum. You can find all of our content actually over at sportspectrum.com, which is our website. And then if you like what you read, share that on your social media pages. It helps get the word out about the ministry and ultimately helps point people back to Jesus. We appreciate you. We love you. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. I do hope you all stay safe and have a great rest of your day.